Well, we're going back to the summer of 1966. I was in summer school taking courses in math. I was also working for the university, interesting enough, as a janitor on the second shift at night, starting at 3 o'clock. It's possible in those days to go to school and work, and you never debt was unknown. School was basically free. So I'd finished with a class in math near the Littlefield Fountain in Benedict Hall. That was the math building then. Walked up toward the main building, the tower, and was a little ahead of my usual schedule because normally we discuss math issues about 10 or 15 minutes after the class finished about 11:30, 11:35. But I left a little early that day, and I did that because the preceding night, that is the 31st of July, Sunday, I'd gone to a movie with my friend Sandra Wilson. It was at Paramount. It was The Russians Are Coming, Paramount in downtown Austin. And we drove out to Mount Bunnell, the highest point in the city, overlooking the river, the lake. Walked up there and started talking about politics. Sandra was involved with the Students for a Democratic Society, and I was interested in that. And she was taking the position that we didn't need police officers, that the people could take care of themselves. And I was feeling, well, you know, there's a need for organized police and other things in government. And she was insisting, no, people can take care of it. And so I posed a hypothetical, said, well, Sandra, what if somebody went crazy and just somebody started randomly shooting people? And that was at 11:45 that night. 12 hours later, it was no longer hypothetical. And the fact that I had posed that hypothetical the night before has stuck with me forever, as is obvious. It's amazing. The next day, and that night then, she and I discussed getting together for lunch. So the next day, as I described a moment ago, after my math class, I crossed the area of the South Mall. And I don't think I went up on the South Mall itself. I went just about to the area there where later on Claire Wilson was shot, and then moved and walked over to the post office, which was a bit west of there, and then into the Student Union, where I sat down waiting for Sandra to come and meet me for lunch. And at that time, it was approximately 11:45. There was some popping going on. We had a lot of construction going on in the university area. So those were sounds we were used to. There are tools like, some of them are called ram sets, that actually have explosives that ram fasteners into concrete. Used to hearing those things. There was a TV there. A lot of us were sitting around just watching the TV, waiting for the news that came on at noon. And the program, I think it was a soap opera, stopped. And an announcer, a local announcer, came on. We'd been getting a network feed, and said, "We've got reports. We're not sure yet, but we think there's somebody shooting from the tower at the university." Well, at that point, I looked around. Other people looked at each other. And I'm sure others said, "I think we ought to stay here, because if you can see him, he can see you. We don't know if this is true yet, but let's just stay put and stop people." A lot of us, I was one of them, had gone deer hunting with rifles. We knew what you could do. So then our duty, what we could do to help, was to make sure people did not go out into the line of fire, which several of us did. We would run around in that south end of the Union and warn people as we saw them coming down the hall from the north or getting ready to go out the doors to the south. It would be in the wide open, to stay there, come and watch the TV, and would always say, if he can see you, or if you can see him, he can see you. Well, one person went up the stairs close to where I was, up a couple of flights, and there was a landing with a window. And that window opens, or you could see the tower from it, and he was shot through there. I've since gone up in the tower and can see the direct line of sight where he was shot. Well, after an hour and a half, We got the all clear, the white flag we saw waved on the TV. A little hesitant, but we went on outside, saw what was going on. I went back in. Sandra still hadn't come to meet me. I went into the chuck wagon, student cafeteria there, sat down and was eating. And a friend came up and said, "We've heard on the radio that Sandra Wilson was shot." It's not an unusual name, but in my mind I thought very well might be Sandra. I went over to Breckenridge Hospital, and it was Sandra. I identified her there, along, I believe, with Claire Wilson, who was not related, but we all knew each other, along with Tom Eccles, who was killed, and identified her there. And then from that point, I went to the telephone, called my father, who was working in a big building downtown Dallas. By then it was maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I said, "Dad, I just want to let you know I'm okay." He said, "Well, great, son. What's going on?" He was in a huge building, office filled with lots of people in Dallas. They had no idea what was going on. I went from there just a block or so to the blood bank and lay down on the table to give blood. And they looked at me and said, "No," because I was in some kind of shock, as many people were. So that's sort of a thumbnail sketch of what happened then.